I'm just going to wait for the thumbs up so I can start. All right, good morning. Thank you for joining me today. Now, last month, as pandemic restrictions were lifted, our offices reopened, and we continued to add capacity to our service-driven operating model to serve more Michiganders. And today I want to share two announcements of new ways in which we're advancing our service-driven model even further. But let me first ensure that everyone knows how we're operating today. Now, right now, our offices are open. Anyone can access in-person services at any of our branch offices by walking up, calling ahead, or going online to schedule a visit. Those who do walk up unannounced are seen immediately if there's an opening, or they're told when the next opening is and invited to wait inside or come back at that time, or they're provided assistance with scheduling a return visit, often for the next day. No matter if they schedule ahead or by phone or online, or how they choose to proceed once a resident walks up, every Michigander is now provided accurate information on when they can expect service and the certainty that the office visit will take an average of 20 minutes. Following decades of dysfunction, this operating model moves the department forward. And I want to thank the members of the Michigan House of Representatives who worked with us to craft bipartisan legislation in support of this model and our post-COVID operating plan that's going to continue providing convenient and efficient in-person services for any Michigan resident who needs them. Republican leadership, House Minority Leader Donna Lazinski, Transportation Committee Vice Chair Tim Sneller, and Oversight Committee Vice Chair Jolie Brixey and member Stephanie Young are among those who played a critical role in that work over the past month, and I'm very proud of their partnership and their embracement of our operation model. And in addition to supporting our current operations, the language that was passed in the House also waives late fees and extends expirations for licenses and driver and vehicle plates on a rolling basis so that they do not all come due on the same day, which creates a backlog. Now, previously, the legislature ignored our call to issue these rolling expirations and instead made 13 months of extensions all expire on the same day, March 31st, 2021, creating the very transaction backlog that spiked demand for services these last 2 months and frustrated countless residents while offices were forced to operate at limited capacity due to the health restrictions and exposure potential for COVID-19. So today, I'm glad we're now moving forward in a more thoughtful, collaborative way that supports all residents. And on that note, I'm here to announce two additional ways that we are advancing our service-driven operations. First, beginning July 19th, our branch offices will be open earlier and they'll be kept open later to serve thousands more residents each week. This will expedite the process of working through the renewal backlog that I mentioned earlier by providing in-person services to an additional 120,000 Michigan residents between now and the end of the fiscal year. And the total number served could be about twice as large as that if legislative leaders had supported our amendment to provide $5 million of federal COVID-19 relief funding to fund additional costs for staff to work extra hours. But after they rejected that amendment, we delayed other projects and hires and worked internally to pull together about half as much money to add additional hours anyway, because we know that's what Michigan residents want. This is going to enable our offices, beginning July 19th through the end of the fiscal year, to stay open until 6 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays instead of 5, and to open an hour earlier, beginning at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Michigan residents who want to schedule visits at these times or walk up are able to do so they can schedule visits during these times online, by phone, or in person, starting at 2 p.m. on Wednesdays when the extra hours for the entire following week become available. Now, our second announcement is that most residents can renew their driver's license and state ID online, by mail, or at self-service stations. That's an announcement because recently the law has been changed, and thanks to a technology upgrade implemented on July 1st, what this means is that photo renewals, which typically require an in-person visit for licenses and IDs, are, as of July 1st, only required every 12 years now instead of every 8. What that means is hundreds of thousands of Michigan residents, drivers, motorists, ID holders will be able to conduct their next renewal from the comfort of their own home using our online services or at a grocery store using a 2-minute transaction at one of 150 self-service stations all across the state. Now, these 2 changes are only the most recent additional ways that my administration is working to solve a problem that has afflicted our residents for decades. And I want to ensure all residents know that as pandemic restrictions continue to be lifted, our office capacity will continue to increase. We're still in the early days of post-pandemic operations, and we've got a strong plan here in place to provide an abundance of in-person opportunities for residents in the coming months. It's going to both help us work through the transaction backlog created by the legislature and to improve upon our operating model that provides convenient, efficient, equitable service for Michigan residents, the same services that have eluded them for decades. But I want to be very clear about something. Since the day I took office, my team has been working night and day to solve these problems that have plagued this department for decades. Few, if any, states have solved the problem at DMVs or Department of Motor Vehicles. It's been evident recently as other states have seen overnight waits, people lining up at buildings overnight just to access in-person services. We haven't had to do that here in Michigan. Yet in Michigan, the decades of operational problems were compounded by disinvestment and neglect that occurred over decades from previous secretaries of state who cut our offices and staff by nearly half, while at the same time the population of our state grew 10% and the number of vehicles on our roads increased by 25%. So in 2 years, even with the pandemic, we have done more to fix these problems than had been done in the previous 20. We've carried out 2 massive technology upgrades of our department's core systems, replaced 90 failed kiosks with 150 self-service stations in a public-private partnership that cost taxpayers nothing, and doubled the percentage of transactions that occur from home or through our online services. So today's announcement is a continuation of that trend. It's one that everyone should be proud of, and that I'm certainly committed to ensuring continues. Our team, our dedicated staff in our branch offices who worked throughout the pandemic to continue serving our most needed residents working on the front lines, are taking on the long-standing problems that have plagued the state and this department, and simultaneously doing more, despite the lack of additional funding that we've requested, to step up and serve longer hours and offer more transactions to ensure that we get the job done. So as anyone working in customer service will tell you, and I know as many small business owners can agree, none of us could have anticipated or planned the challenges of providing face-to-face transactions during a pandemic. Yet our staff continued to meet deadlines as we rehauled our technology systems, and our office staff provided in-person services to first responders and critical workers, even at the height of the pandemic, before resuming face-to-face interactions with the entire public 13 months ago. This administration is making government work for all Michigan residents, and we're going to continue to do so in the weeks and months ahead. So stay tuned as we continue to announce additional advancements in our service-driven operations and move the department forward. With that, I'll close and take questions. Thanks.
Hi, Jordan Hermany, Gongward News Service. I was curious, it sounds like you found some way internally to get the money to provide for additional hours, but you maybe didn't have additional staff. Are you concerned at all about burnout regarding these individuals who are taking extra hours, and how are you working to combat that?
That's a really important question. And yes, I think it's important to note first that the easiest way to solve this problem and create extra hours was to get the additional COVID funding from the legislature. And we're still working with the governor. We hope to see some headway there, but in the lack of that funding, we just have to solve the problem internally. And it really came from these very employees, these staff who've been working throughout the pandemic, who I met with and said, you know what? we'll work longer hours and we'll cut appointment or schedule times from 20 to 10 minutes and everything else that we've worked to do, just so that we can keep this current model going, because it's much better than the model we had before, the take a number and wait system that caused all of our branches to, though they closed at 5, oftentimes staff would stay 3, 4, 5 extra hours to work through the line that had accumulated throughout the day. So in recognition that under this system, they're happier and they're working harder and willing to work harder than ever before. We've been able to work with them to continue to solve this problem. But you're exactly right in that with additional collaboration from the legislature, would be able to do it more efficiently and less painfully. But that said, we've also internally delayed extra projects and other things that we've got planned to be able to cover the funds. But I can't emphasize enough that our ability to do this is coming from the folks on the front lines in our branch offices who know this works and see it every day and want to keep it going and are willing to do whatever it takes to keep it going. And that's particularly very inspiring to me. Yeah. We are also hiring additional staff, but those additional staff are vacancies that were created throughout the pandemic because a lot of people did, as oftentimes it's happened in our customer service industry, have moved on to other positions. And that's typical also of the department. So we have close to 80 vacancies across the state that we're working to fill this summer. And we've posted them online for anyone who's interested in filling them. Those are in addition to the greeter positions, but the funding for those are already within our existing budget. Hi. Good. How are you doing?
Say to the senior population have been a little bit critical about the modernization of SOS branches, those who want to go in and take a ticket and maybe don't have access to a computer.
I'm particularly mindful for the challenges of our senior residents and others who are don't have access to technology or even for transportation to get or work freedoms to be able to get to offices at certain times. That's one of the reasons we have two solutions there. One of the reasons is the walk-up model that we've announced that does allow people to walk up to any office and be seen right away if there's space, or be told when there will be space where they can either wait inside to be seen when that space opens up, or they can come back at that time. But secondly, one of the things that we're going to launch in a few months, I wasn't going to say this today, but we are looking to, and I've talked to state representatives about it, and I've talked to the legislature about it. We want to launch mobile offices, mini offices that can go directly to senior centers and other places of worship, community gatherings where people already are, and provide services there. And what I'd like to ultimately have happen is to be able to have, for example, senior centers throughout the state know that one day a month, there's going to be a branch office in their parking lot that they can come to and have access to services. So we're continuing working with state representatives in the communities where there are the largest concentration of those senior centers and other places to find ways to bring services to all of our residents. And that's something that we're actively planning now, and we'll be announcing more details in the months ahead.
Jonathan, who's staying online, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Secretary Benson. Some legislative critics say they want the Secretary of State to resume walk-in services. You're saying you already are offering walk-up services. What's the difference between those two? Is it just semantics? And second part of the question, if somebody walks up right now, are they guaranteed service the same day?
Great questions. First, hold on, wait. Great. So the second one, I mean, it's impossible to predict and make guarantees, but I'll say what we have now is a model where people can walk up and be seen right away that in that moment by a greeter. We're working on ensuring there are greeters in all 131 offices all across the state. What then happens is contingent upon a number of factors, but our commitment is to providing those in-person services for people at a time when they need them. For the most part, that will involve same-day operations, but someone may choose to come back later in the day or to come back another day. That's the conversation that would happen between the greeter and the resident when they arrive. On the second piece, in terms of the semantics, I think it is, but there is a clear distinction between the old model and the new model. The old model was a take a number and wait system, and there was no certainty whether on our part of our residents or on part of our workers as to when someone might be seen. Even under the former technology that we had to do away with, called My Time, it was wildly inaccurate as to when someone could expect to actually have that service interaction. That's what this new model changes. By allowing someone or inviting anyone to walk up to an office and either be seen right away if there's space available, or be given an opportunity to return later that day, or wait for space to become available, or be given an opportunity to schedule another time in the near future, that enables our system to have more predictability as to when someone can be served, and then for that resident to make an informed decision about when they want to have their service. What is also going to get to the point where same day transactions and all those things are, and that is certainly in our model to have those same day transactions. What's going to get us to a point where we have abundance of those transactions is increasing the efficiency of our operations by hiring staff and also ensuring that each interaction is effectively timed and allocated. That's what we're working on now over the next several weeks in particular, because we want to get to a point where where our offices are able to handle statewide 45,000 transactions a day. We're slowly getting to that point as we emerge out of the pandemic era and replace staff and other things. And what that gets us to is enabling us to have an abundance of opportunities for people to be seen the day that they come in, and also given an opportunity to come back at a convenient time for them if they don't want to wait to be seen. So we're continuing to improve those services and work in the direction of people being able to have their in-person transactions at a time that's convenient to them. And the last thing I'll emphasize, and this sort of second part of my announcement today, is that prior to the pandemic, we noted that about half the people that walked up to our branch offices or came into a branch office didn't need in-person services. And they had an option to, or that perhaps they didn't know about, to do their transaction from a self-service station. The number of transactions that self-service stations now handle, with the driver's license renewals being extended another 4 years, has increased exponentially. And so what that also is going to do is ensure that if people come up and want that same day service, they may likely find they don't need an in-person transaction. They can do it from a self-service station, which are located both in branch offices and grocery stores. And so that will be a possibility as well.
If you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi there, Secretary Benson. Thank you for taking my call. I was wondering if you would be able to give us a projection on when the current backlog will be erased based on, the universe of extended driver's license and things like that, and also, how many appointments are available going forward.
It's going to be dependent on a number of variables, but we have a plan in place to work through it over the next 2 to 3 months. And I certainly think by the end of the fiscal year, particularly as we've added these additional hours today, we'll be able to get there.
I'm actually changing subjects if you don't mind. I know that on Friday there was the campaign finance resolution between Ron Weiser and the allegations of payoff of Stan Grott. I was curious why the Bureau didn't decide to kind of push and get more donor information and why you decided to enter into a conciliatory agreement?
That was something that was directly in the purview of the Bureau of Elections, and there was reason to believe that the Michigan Republican Party violated the Campaign Finance Act. So they proceeded, as they do under law in all circumstances, to seek a conciliation agreement as required by law. That settlement was reached, and the Republican Party is paying $200,000, keeping with the precedent of the Bureau of Elections, and that is a agreement that was reached between the Bureau and the entity that violated the law. And I think my goal was simply just to make sure that we were treating everyone equally and the same, and with no political interference whatsoever. And so that is what came to fruition as a result.
Jonathan Osting, your follow-up question, and that'll be our last question for the day. You need to unmute yourself, Jonathan.
Yeah, hi, Secretary Benson. Going back to the discussion on same-day service. The bills that the House approved last week and you've complimented do say that in-person services provided must allow for same-day transactions to be completed. So if the governor signs this legislation, will it require changes in your office or in branch offices as they're currently operating?
No, our current operation plan provides those same-day services for anyone who walks up, and in particular in compliance with the language that we worked on in partnership with the House legislators. So I'm confident that our plan and the current model that we're operating under with our offices open and allowing a walk-up does comply completely with the legislative language. And I'm grateful that legislators were willing to work with us to construct language that identifies and provides those same-day operations in the way that I've talked about, where people can walk up, and if there's an opportunity for them to be seen right away, they'll be able to be seen right away, or they'll be given information as to when that day they can be seen before the offices close at 5. And recognizing that there's still lots of different variables with customer service and transactions, which I talked about earlier, in terms of whether an in-person transaction is needed and those sorts of things. We're confident that this model complies with the language of the legislation. And for that reason, I commend the bipartisan resolution we were able to develop that both addresses the importance of those convenient and efficient in-person services for residents and protecting those, and also balances our operational model and the capacity that we have and are continuing to build.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. That's all the time we have today.
Okay, well, thank you all. And again, just to reiterate, we'll be open additional hours beginning July 19th, an hour earlier on some days, an hour later on others. And also now, as of July 1st, the vast majority of residents do not need for another additional 4 years to have an in-person visit for their driver's license or state ID renewal to get a new photo, because that 8-year renewal period has now been extended to 12 years. And in those cases, they can renew their licenses at a self-service station or from the comfort of their home. Thank you all today. We'll continue to announce more changes in the future as we emerge into this post-pandemic era. And I'm grateful for all of those around the state who are working with us to ensure we're adequately and effectively and efficiently providing in-person services and all transactions available for our residents. Thanks.